This is NHTV2, North Haven Government Television, a service of North Haven Community Television. The following program is brought to you through the support of the Town of North Haven.
Okay, good evening, everyone. I'd like to call the November 10th, 2021 board meeting to order at 6:30 p.m. I will not be able to attend the meeting tonight as recovering from the breakthrough case of COVID. And after I make my opening statement, I will be passing on the chair duties tonight to Dr. Randy Peterson to run the meeting. I did want to join the meeting tonight and just say a few words about Dot Logan. Tonight is Dot's last Board of Ed meeting. And I've known Dot, we were talking about it earlier, for almost 25 years. We started when she was a teacher representative on the Pta Council, and I was president of Pta Council. What Dot has brought to the Board of Ed has been invaluable. Her knowledge of special ed from the elementary level all the way up has been invaluable to us as we learn, as we make decisions, and we set policies. Dot, unfortunately, I can't see you in my area, but I just want to say from the bottom of my heart, there you are. Thank you for all that you've done for the school system as a teacher, and but more importantly for me as a Board of Ed rep. You have been one of the best, and I've learned so much from you. So thank you very much from me and all of the board members. And with that, I will pass the meeting on to Randy. Thank you. I will be listening in the meeting, but I need to put it on you. Thank you.
These are for you.
Oh, thank you.
I'm going to go.
Okay. Look at this pattern.
I don't know what I'm supposed to do.
Oh,
Yeah.
thank you.
Thank you, Dot.
Can I just say 2 words?
Just 2.
No, I just want to thank Anita for her kind comments. We do go way back, and I value my time on the board immeasurably. And I think that I have to say my greatest thrill has been, as a board member, seeing students that I've known from Montelese and North Haven Middle School walk in the door as newly hired teachers. And I also have to say that this is a very good group. We work well together. We may have differences of opinion, but we've always worked it out in a very respectful manner. And I've enjoyed C&I, working with Melinda.
Thank you so much.
And I've also, it's been a pleasure and honor to be the representative at ESIS. So thank you.
Dot, these are for you too,
Oh,
from everybody.
Okay, so before we begin, I'd like to remind everyone that this is a public building, so we ask you to please wear a mask. If you don't have one, we have them in the back there in a box. Please feel free to grab one. Okay, so our first speaker, our first presentation tonight is Mr. Paul Ciccarella. He's going to talk to us about the addition of a wrestling program at North Haven High School.
A little short, so I'll have to pull this down a little bit. I apologize. Thank you for giving me an opportunity to speak. Do I have to start my name and my address, all that stuff? Just go for it?
Fine, thank you.
Okay. I'd like to start by thanking you for your service on the Board of Education. Congratulations. And thank you for helping all the students along the way and all the years of your service. I appreciate that. I'm sure everybody else here in the town also recognizes and appreciate your service to our young children that move on to be adults. And the work that we do here and in the schools and on the fields make a difference. So when they walk into those classrooms and teach our future generations, you know, it starts right here. So thank you for your service. I'm speaking a little bit about wrestling and why I think that we should have a wrestling program here in North Haven. I was not a wrestler in my young ages, elementary school, middle school, etc. I fell into this sport because I got cut from the basketball team, hence the moving the mic down and I'm too short. And it was the best thing to come out of a sad thing. I was cut, I was upset. All of my friends had the ability to go play basketball, and I couldn't. And a few of my other friends said, why don't you try wrestling? And I tried wrestling, and again, this is something that it's good to start at a young age. Just like any other sport, to build the fundamentals and get the foundation to the sport, it is really important to start at a young age. So I was a little skeptical, but I tried. I had a phenomenal coach. I'll talk about that briefly in a moment. And freshman year, first couple of matches, I got beat up pretty good. And my great wrestling coach instilled a few values of working hard and focusing on a few different things. And it was just one move. And slowly I saw the progression of the hard work from the one move turn into 2 moves, 3 moves. Long story short, I went from being a freshman wrestler, getting pummeled every match in the beginning of that season, the end of my freshman year to start winning, sophomore year, junior year, not losing, and ultimately becoming a state champion. It really wasn't about the winning that really meant a lot. Wrestling is a very unique sport for both girls and boys. And there doesn't need to be 2 different teams. But it teaches a lot of youth a lot of valuable life lessons that honestly, if it wasn't for the sport and my coach, I probably wouldn't be where I am today. Again, sports, it's sports and extracurricular activities is a huge part of a child's development, as I'm sure you guys are all aware of. But wrestling's a little unique. I was doing some research about what I would present here and what I would talk about, and it was 10 reasons why a child should wrestle. And it talks about their development of other athletics. So this sport helps with balance, it helps with conditioning, it helps with work ethic, which also transfers into your real life. It really promotes personal values and responsibility. You have to make a weight to wrestle. It's only you and one other person from the other team on the mat, and that really could trigger somebody to understand that you have to put the work in to get the results. It really builds that confidence. Being a young freshman wrestler to my senior year, I developed as a person. And again, I took those lessons with me throughout my life. And I actually went back to coach East Haven High School wrestling just to try to help one child the way Coach D helped me. And, without that sport, a lot of wrestlers that I talk to feel the same way, that they wouldn't be where they are today because of the values that were instilled into them. And I'll leave that point alone and talk a little bit about why I think it would be great fit here in North Haven. A while back, a few parents, Joe Iamuno and another parent, Jeff Smalley, really were so close to getting a wrestling program. We had an all-state wrestler, Joe Iamuno, and as a freshman to be an all-state wrestler and do what he did was amazing. And they were so close. After that first step, they talked to so many other parents, so many other coaches in so many different sports. And the support is overwhelming to get this program at a high school level and hopefully start to build a youth program to help all of our sports. Again, from conditioning and all around great complement to somebody's physical ability and mental ability, which transfers into additional sports and life. As far as the cost of something like this, we don't have pads. We don't have helmets. It's a very minimal cost sport. We wear a singlet. There's other ones that are just like spandex. You could be t-shirts, shorts, etc. And the one-time cost of a mat. Other than that, the wrestlers bring their own shoes and headgear. So as far as a cost associated with investing into our children and our youth, it's minimal. There'll be a larger upfront cost for the mats in the beginning, But once that's done, there'll be very minimal cost moving forward, and I can answer any questions about cost. I have a little experience. I did coach East Haven High School wrestling for 10 years. So I could answer any questions about the sport and the I guess you could say, back end or administrative duties of the sport. And again, just in recap, there is an overwhelming amount of support from the town, and I just think it would be a great addition to our already great athletic program here in North Haven. And I did speak to so many other administrators, from superintendents to coaches, athletic directors, and I think they think it will also be a great fit. And with that, if anybody has any questions, I'd love to answer them.
I do have a couple. Thank you so much for coming out to talk to us tonight. I think this is a great idea. I just have a couple quick questions, and the first is, like, do you have a feel for the level of appetite that kids have to participate in a sport like this? Are you confident that we would have enough to form a team and be able to compete well?
Yes, I do. From canvassing all the other sports, I really think there is an overwhelming amount of support for a few different reasons. One, it's a winter sport, and there's not that many winter sports. And again, people get cut from the basketball team, so it's a place for both boys and girls to find a way to stay in shape and again, participate in another sport. When I moved to North Haven about 6 years ago, and people knew that I was a wrestler and I coached, they approached me saying, when are we getting this going? You know, this is a great town for it. When are we getting it going? So it's been going on for 6 years. People coming up to me, and I coach, matter of fact, I have a playoff soccer game, youth soccer game in about 15 minutes. But all the sports, I mention it, I talk about my coaching experience, and they say they would love to do it. And there's an overwhelming amount of support and interest, again, because of UFC and other martial arts. So there's a lot of interest in this sport. It's growing.
That's fantastic. And do you have an annual benchmark from East Haven that you could give us from a cost perspective, just so we understand, like, round numbers, what it might cost? Sure,
absolutely. I asked the principal of the school, Vin Donuzzo, to get me over some numbers from the last year pre-COVID. And there is a little bit of a difference because they're in a lot more tournaments. We have a couple of years in this sport. We would probably be a JV program for 2 years. In the SEC, New Haven just did this, probably, I'm saying just did this, I'm dating myself, probably about 15 years ago, and Shelton just before that. And the cost is less because of buses and referees. I would guess that this number, after us getting the mats, which are about $3,000 or $4,000, 10 to 15, depending on how many matches we do.
That's really good to know. Understood. And I don't want to really keep you. And I realize that you're here as a citizen, but I do feel obligated to ask you this one other question, because we also had girls rugby come before us at the last board meeting and kind of present a very solid argument, as you've just presented to us here, for expanding the sports program to include girls rugby. And the one thing that sticks in my mind, which I don't think will be an overall impediment from my perspective alone, is the cost associated with it. And one thing that I'd like to just ask you, Senator, is if you have any pull-up in Hartford on our ECS funding. Because North Haven in 2019 received $1,632 per student from the state. Meanwhile, our peers in Berlin had $2,700, in Bethel had $2,600, in Wallingford had $4,500, in North Branford had $4,400, et cetera, et cetera. And under the 2021 bill, we actually lose 2.2%, and places like Bethel, who are getting more funding than us already, are only losing 1.7%. And I from my personal perspective, I think that this is a worthwhile investment, but it would be great to get some additional ECS funds from the state in order to help us defray the cost from our taxpayers.
Sure. So I'd be happy to come back and talk to you guys with my senator cap on, but I'll give you some brief overview on the finances and advocating for money, as I do every day. Well, we're looking for some steep money to improve our fields, which State Representative Dave Yacarino and I did a really good job of getting that. And any opportunity I get to advocate for any of the districts that I represent, I will do as much as I can to bring some money back to our district. I will look at that closely and take a look. I don't have numbers, and I wasn't prepared to answer that question, but I'd love to talk offline, and I could get back to you on that. But I will advocate for our district, as I've been doing, and look forward to continue to do. We do have an overwhelming amount of support, as I said, and there are people willing to fund. In that first proposal I was telling you about with Joe Iamuno, who, by the way, in 1 year of wrestling, talk about opportunities, he got a scholarship to a prep school, full ride, in New York. And because of the sports, not an everyday sport, if you will, like baseball and hockey, and there's so many athletes going for that sport, there's great opportunity for scholarships, which is a great thing that I left out because I did want to keep it brief. I don't want to bore you guys with all of my notes because I could have talked for hours about this sport and what it did for me. But there are a lot of other ways to get money to fund some of our upfront costs that we are already planning. We are, the group of parents, it's not just me, there's a group of parents that are interested in this, and we want to get a youth program going as well, and maybe that could absorb some of the cost of the mats, but I will advocate for our town in any way I can.
I'll send you an email with my numbers.
Awesome.
So I have a question in terms of gender. You had mentioned both male and female. Is the plan to start out with both male and female, or to start with a specific gender and then grow it into an additional gender? What's the plan in terms of that?
So this sport is phenomenal for a lot of reasons, but I'll talk to that one specifically. In this sport, both boys and girls wrestle at the same time. It's by weight class. So if you weigh 103 pounds, you're a boy or a girl, it doesn't make a difference. You wrestle the person that's your size to make it fair. This sport's great. There's a place for politics, but not in wrestling. It's if you wrestle off, you're the same weight, and the girl beats the boy, the girl gets to wrestle varsity. That's why I love this sport, is there is no politics in it. It doesn't make a difference, a boy or a girl. You win, you wrestle. It's a great sport, and that's a great question.
Okay, so they're not separate teams?
Nope.
They're all combined together?
Same team.
Okay.
Any other questions?
Anybody else? Anita, do you have any questions?
No, I don't have any questions. Thank you for asking. I know Paul, when he first came to the town about 6-7 years ago, brought this up to Mr. Pta and then to myself, that he would be interested in starting a wrestling team here. And this worked out just now for him to be able to present this to us. So thank you, Paul. I appreciate that.
Thank you very much, and I hope you feel better. If there's no questions, again, thank you so much for the opportunity to present this. If anybody does have questions, I could provide the board with my email address, and I'd be more than happy to answer any questions that anybody may have. Thank you again for the opportunity.
Thank you.
Good luck.
Thank you. Sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
Okay. Good evening, board members. As we've discussed in the past, one of the largest variables in the Board of Education's budget is the annual medical and dental and prescription costs. We are always on the lookout for ways in which we can stabilize and lower these expenses. Tonight, Everside Health will be presenting an option to you for your consideration. Presenting for Everside will be Adam Inglese, Regional Account Manager, and Shannon Mason, VP of Sales.
So I think I get the shortest person award tonight. Might move this down just a little bit as well. Thank you for allowing me to present to you all tonight. I'm Shannon Mason with Everside Health. And I think I also wanted to mention, I don't know if a lot of you all already know, but North Haven Board of Education, you already are an organization that is using some of the Everside Health services. We're actually providing some COVID testing for your staff members, your employees, and their dependents get access to that. And that's over at the ACES facility right now. And so if anyone wasn't aware of that, I just wanted to make you aware. And again, we're thankful that you are already using those type of services. So a little bit about what we're here to talk to you about is, again, a enhanced benefit that could be offered to your employees and dependents that isn't an insurance benefit. But it's going to benefit you a great deal in regard to the fact that you're a self-funded employer right now, which means that your health plan expenses, you're paying for claims that are incurring all the time on your individuals. And in the case of what we're going to talk about today is a little bit about how we can enhance that, how you have this ability to use services that the ACES is already using right now in the form of getting a provider, a doctor, and nursing staff on staff in a facility and being able to provide access to primary care in a little bit of a different manner. So I passed out before some pamphlets to you all, and I also have a PowerPoint that we can maybe just move through a little bit. But oftentimes people will ask me, what makes this different? I mean, we all have PPO networks or some kind of network that we access for our providers. We know that we've got great medical coverage for our providers or for our patients right now, our members. And if you want to switch to the next slide, Adam, there is still problems happening in the healthcare system. And some of those problems resolve in access or quality or timeliness with our providers. And at the end of the day, a lot of folks say, hey, the cost is increasing year after year for both us as a member, our employees or our dependents of our organization here, but also you all in paying your yearly renewals and everything. So if you'll push to the next slide, Adam, for me. You know, one of the things that we like to talk about, and if you'll forward through a little bit more, is what is it that drives healthcare to be a little bit better for you as an organization? What could be a better focus? And that resolves to the fact that we need more primary care. We need more of our members using it, but also getting more access to it and at the highest quality we can give them. And so primary care is, you know, definitely a dependent area for us. Long wait times are something that members will often talk about. They also talk about how they don't feel that connection with their providers because maybe they just don't have enough time with the providers. I know personally, a lot of times I get about 5 minutes with my provider when I go to see them. And I know that my provider themselves isn't even feeling really happy and satisfied with their own experience because they know they want to give better care, but they know they got to get to the next room and the next room as part of their practice that they're running. So on the next slide, I talk a little bit about, you know, what is some of the problems we're solving for here. And when you use our services that are made available to you through ACES and their center location, you would not only get a 9-to-5 type scenario of care in the marketplace, you would also get 24/7 access to care. And what does that mean? Well, right now, I can't tell my doctor to be open late at night or on a Saturday. In our situation, you gain back a lot of control over the members and having access to the provider and even having access to other providers after hours. Probably have that with, you know, a health plan that you have right now for your membership, but you get a virtual primary care experience, which they can use anywhere. They can use if they're traveling, they can convert an appointment, or they can, you know, reach somebody to figure out if they need to go to urgent care and so forth. The other thing that makes our model a lot different and solves to a lot of problems that medical plans face and benefits face in general is just the time that a provider has with your membership. Providers, I was even shocked to learn that a normal primary care provider in our marketplace sees over 2,000 patients. They see about 2,600 patients in just one practice. And in our model, and what we've designed for ACEs already, is that our providers are only seeing a maximum of 885 patients. That's a huge ratio. That means we're seeing a third less, patients than the normal provider would see out in the marketplace. What happens in that situation then is providers are happier. They are spending more time. They're getting a chance to talk to your employees and dependents about things they just didn't have time before. Chronic conditions. Did you get your gaps in cares filled, like your preventative screenings for colonoscopy or a mammogram, or if you're diabetic, your foot exam? They're getting in the weeds a lot further with our membership, driving better quality care, and then driving down future high claimants in the future. So if you move to the next slide there, Adam, or if you're following along in these books, another thing that increases the quality of what we're providing here is we empower and train our providers, like your ACEs organization there, and you'd have access to that center and perhaps even other centers that are built around here in the future. They get this technology aspect that they might not have access to now. It helps them with specialty referrals. It helps them with a electronic medical record. That is great. If they have to refer out for specialties, that they know they're going to get those case notes back in, and they're going to be able to provide a great experience for your employees and staff. The other thing that I'd love to point out with our model is you don't wait. I know that sounds kind of crazy, right? So normally when I talk to my hairdresser, my dry cleaner, anybody in my neighborhood, they say to me, boy, I wish my employer offered this. And it actually saves the employer money too. This is sounding really attractive here. And it's true in the sense that these are dedicated centers that a number of schools, a number of towns and counties are all coming together and offering to their membership to be able to give a ability for someone to get an appointment seen right away, back on the job, sooner. It can even reduce perhaps maybe some of those situations you might have with getting substitutes right now. If you choose this, they might be able to get in and out a lot faster. That's usually what happens. They can get their blood drawn and a lot of things done all at once in a convenient nearby location. And then you can offer it as you choose to some of these other individual members of your school system that might want to use this type of a model in order to be attracted and to retain their employment here at your organization. If you'll switch to the next slide there, I bring back to you too the time with the with your provider. Again, in the marketplace, it's 16 minutes is really door to door, but actual time with that provider inside that door is often as little as 5 minutes. With our model, that means that a lot of employees are choosing perhaps sometimes not to go to the doctor when they really need to go to the doctor, and they don't know that they're going to get the experience that they wanted. Our model actually is to the point where about 3 times a year the employees or a staff member actually comes in and sees one of our providers because of the experience that they get. The last slide here, or second to last slide, talks a little bit about cost. So I know that a lot of you have members on your staff that use high deductible health plans. And when that happens, a lot of money is on their backs, for co-pays and deductibles and coinsurance. And what our model is offering is that you don't have to charge them anything for the services of our providers in the ACEs center that would be used. That's how they're choosing to do it. Other towns and schools that evaluate this usually choose that way. And it reduces such an out-of-pocket expense and a barrier that you might have to your employees and staff and their dependents getting access to care. The last slide here talks a little bit about how does this benefit North Haven Board of Education and your budget. Well, we know that renewals are increasing year after year. 6.5% renewals isn't uncommon. Sometimes I've seen them as close to double digits. And with our model, over time, you're reducing your trend cost because we're making the cost of care less, and your employees and dependents are getting more of it. And I'll tell you how that works in just a second. So people tell me a little bit about what's the solution, Shannon? You've talked a little bit about, what's happening with all our claims in the marketplace, but how is this different again? Well, it's different because when you work with an organization like ours, you're being able to purchase healthcare directly from a source. We're your third party in this example that provides the staffing. We handle all the staffing, electronic medical records, all the labs, all the supplies, all the things that go into making a healthcare institution happen for you. And in this case, it's a consumable. You know that your population's already using a lot of primary care, maybe not being using enough preventative care or your wellness or chronic condition management or testing, vaccinations, and labs, but it's there. They have access to it, and you're going to spend for it anyway. Well, in this example, that consumable of direct primary care is something that you're working with us to provide. We hire, these actual providers for you. And we're not an insurer. We don't charge through insurance. We are basically your entity for which you can have this access. Another thing I love to point out, too, is that it's always voluntary for the members. They don't have to go to these primary care providers, but they voluntarily choose because of the low cost and the quick service and the quality and the fact they can get so much done all in one single location. So the next slide there, if we go to complete care, Adam, this one talks a little bit about, well, what kind of care can happen in these centers. And so you can make choices that are different than maybe an ACES has chosen to do, but every center always provides a primary care provider to you, just like you would have in the marketplace. You will have access to HRA, that's called health risk assessments and biometric screenings. So if you wanted to have some wellness programs maybe that you want to amp up or even start for your staff members, that's something we can handle for you, and we would in the center, all through a provider-driven source. You can also have mental health services. Many of our centers do occupational health even. You might have like those CDL physicals for bus drivers or DOT, perform drug screens or need somebody for triaging, like somebody got hurt or something on the job. All these type of things can also be done inside our centers. And we also happen to do the labs, all the blood draw labs, cultures, a strep test, a flu test, a COVID test, and we can do all these vaccines. So there's really a lot you can do in here, and you can expand it over time to even eventually, future state, maybe even have like physical therapy, chiropractic, and other things that could be included in one of your centers. The next slide talks about, well, what makes this different? What does Everside give back to you? And what is our promise to you, really? And our promise here is, to basically have a better outcome for you and your patients, which are your members, employees and staff members, to have a great experience, to be able to know that the providers are getting that extra time with your organization and their members, to make sure that they're even incented, our providers, on making sure they've closed what we call gaps in care, and those would mean that you haven't had a certain type of preventative screen that you're supposed to have done, and to be able to manage chronic conditions effectively through a variety of means, coaching as well as medications if they're needed. And at the end of the day, our other promise to you is that we're going to save the health plan money over time, the pharmacy benefit plan over time. And what I love and I get passionate about, and why I do this for a living, is I know that this is a highly, highly ranked benefit for your organization. Howard, I worked with him prior to coming here to present to you about even taking a survey of your employees and finding out, would they use this? Would they embrace it? Do they like the idea behind all these services, the location? the survey was phenomenal. And every survey I've done on this, or I talked to my neighbors and friends in the industry, they always say it's the #1 ranked benefit, second to their paychecks, after you put one of these health centers in place and give them that access. It grows in popularity over time to a point where they don't want to go anywhere else because they have such a great benefit here in the fact that you've offered these health centers to them. So maybe we'll switch to financial model real quick. On this section, I love to point out, well, how do we pay for it? And how we pay for it is, again, you contract with an organization like ours, Everside Health. We set up a flat monthly fee. It's pretty nice because maybe you've got staff that comes in and off your plans throughout the year, and you might not like all that variability of my bills are changing all the time. So we charge a flat monthly fee. In this case, it's what we're doing for the ACEs organization too. And those expenses become very predictable. We also, because of the fact that you're going to save on the back end on your claims, we highly recommend that you don't charge for the members to use those services inside the center. You could charge, some people do, but most often they don't charge the member to use the services. If you'll switch to the next slide for me, Adam, you'll also notice that, what does it cost here? And the greatest benefit to a North Haven actually is that ACES has done the heavy lifting for you. And what I mean by that is they paid some startup fees in the early stages when they set up the center. And right now they're even building out a new center for the use of this. I was just there today. It's a beautiful facility. They're adding a second exam room, even knowing that this will probably scale up over time. And those expenses they're incurring the build out, the retrofit, they're putting in the exam tables, and they're moving from one center to another right now. So a lot of that stuff that you would have been paying for, you're not having to. You're basically joining them if you come into this agreement, and it makes it easy just to walk in the door and know you're just paying flat monthly once you start using the service. You'll notice on this one, it's hard to read on that big screen, but on your handouts, there's a small little access fee that's attributed to ACES. That's sort of a payback for all the use of their building and their equipment and their exam tables and things of that nature. But it's as you use it type scenario that gets paid back to them. Other good thing about this is as we build more and more utilization over time, our commitment at Everside is, we remember that 885 number I told you on patients, we get to that number and we start seeing more and more utilization, we up your staff and we make sure that we get maybe another part-time staff member in there providing those primary care services, and it just keeps increasing over time. This next slide, so I worked with your consultants here who handle your self-funded benefit plan. I'll just point you to this. This was all backroom information that we collected claims, we analyzed them, we put a pro forma together. You can see that overall savings to your health plan through these different types of expenses is expected to be $450,000 even after the first year. And if you'll switch to the next slide there, Adam, you'll see that, and one of the reasons I'm so proud of this proposal, go back just one again, is the return on investment. So, often I don't get to come in and talk to a group like yours and say, we're hitting a break-even point for you in less than 1 year on your investment, and we're saving you money, at the end of the first year. If you build this thing out over 5 years, utilization trends like it normally does in our book of business, that's quite a return on investment for being able to give such a quality benefit to your membership as well. So the next slide here, this is just a little example. I know that you have a combination of plans, I think, not just HD, HP, or high deductible health plan. You've got other types of plans too. So I just ran some basic numbers. What could this mean to your staff members and their dependents in the way of saving them copay money? And if they had $30 copays, which I know that's probably not right, and 10 on generic, that would net them, you know, over 70 grand in all those kind of fees. High deductible health plans, though, that savings even greater because they might have $200 claims or something they're seeing in the market. So next slide talks about, well, what if I don't do anything? And certainly that's an option, but what happens often, and you can see that Milliman's, this nationally accredited accounting firm, they have validated our numbers that we're showing a almost flat or very low 1% trend line for premium renewals year after year because claim cost goes down. If we just don't do anything, then either that ends up on, you know, the backs of our employees or absorbed under budgets from North Haven. And so this is a big reason why people do this, is to avoid their premium trend increases going up year after year. So next slide here is, you know, I know you all are teachers, some of you maybe, and others are on the board here for the Board of Education. And I wanted to highlight a special group of ours that we have worked with for, gosh, almost 10 years. And it's the third largest school district in the state of Florida. So it's a very, very large school district called Polk County Schools. Linda King would love to, you know, she's always available for reaching out to her. They have expanded what they've done over time to the fact that they have more than one center now. Like I said, there's a lot of customization you can do with these things. You might start with one and later expand on, and that's one of the reasons I think ACES is interested in, you know, more groups like yours that might be interested too, to help get more things in there. It might be chiropractic, physical therapy, x-ray. There's not really much that's off limit. We might even have licensed social worker, something like that down the road that we could always hire and include into a model if you would be interested. I always love to point out their savings. Linda always is a big advocate of the fact that they had 129% return on investment in just 3 years, and that she sees this as her most sought after benefit, again, you know, second to their salaries there. I'll give Adam just a second.
Public Schools was formed.
Oh, sorry about that. So if you get this in the technology form, you'll be able to listen to Linda herself give a little testimonial about what her experience has been with Everside Health. And there's a few of these little video, they're small, 3-4 minute video clips that are all embedded in our deck, and you can look at it when you have time. But Adam, as the account manager to ACES here, the regional account manager, he deals with a lot of the different technology aspects that that client uses and a lot of our other clients use. And I wanted him to give just, you know, a few minutes, if he could, as an overview to what some of these highly sought after advantages are to our technology and what kind of reporting and things you might get that you're not getting right now. So Adam, would you speak for a couple minutes?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
Thank you guys for taking the time to listen to us. We appreciate it. And one of the biggest advantages, but the second part to a great provider, is also the technology we provide for the provider and also available to the patients or your employees as well. So we've got a mobile app that is available to the patients. They're able to go on there. They can make an appointment. They can request medication refills, view their lab results, all in real time. So as soon as the provider reviews it and says okay, they go straight to the app. They'll get a notification or it'll show right up. And that's awesome too, because at the same time we want them to have access to that, right? So you're at home worried about the labs you got or the labs you did. Patient, provider will review it, and you've got access right in your hand. So the technology we provide for the providers is a little more in depth. It's going to give an analysis breakdown of disease conditions. So whether it's diabetes, hypertension, hyperlipidemia, it'll give them really a good breakdown on a large scale or small scale, the entire population or just a very specific population of what's going on. And it gives us a good insight into projection. You know, what do we need to focus on? Do we have a high diabetes group that we need to focus on that we can really dive into and do some education pieces? So that can go in any which direction for all disease management cases. And then, as you mentioned, the reporting package for the school board and what we do for ACES currently, there's an online dashboard that they can go on real time and get access to data at any point in time. You can pick your filters if you want to do Q1, Q2, Q3. You can rule out health if you're doing occupational health, or you can include it. So it gives you a really good insight into what's going on in the clinic, obviously without worrying about PHI and HIPAA violations and that type of thing. It is a larger scale, but you can certainly dive into your frequency of visits, what is the busiest time, busiest day, which gives us a great insight to when to run programs. Because if we don't want to run programs, it's going to impact your total visits, right? We still want to make sure that we can provide care when available. So that's one of the three that we do offer for the providers, the clients, and the patients as well.
And I think your next slide kind of gives just a little demo of what it would look like. This is an area that, very often people will say, what's the worst that could happen? Well, if people didn't use it, would be the worst that could happen. But I just wanted to let you know that we see every month an uptick in utilization. We expect more coming out of COVID now, and as we get user friendly services available. We know from the survey that was done here, and Howard, if you wanted to mention any comments about what your feedback has been on that would be great. The last slides I will tell you to kind of give you a description of services and where the center is currently located.
So just to go off on the survey, I believe two meetings ago I discussed the survey and I sent it to you, but just to reiterate some of the questions. So we surveyed 388 users or employees that currently access Anthem for our insurance. We had 135 responses, which is a 34.8% response, positive response to the survey, which I am being told is a good survey response number. We asked a bunch of different questions, but I think the relevant questions, the Wellness Center potential user metrics, even if you had a primary physician, would you use the Center for Urgent or Immediate Care, especially knowing the cost associated with it, which would be zero basically for the employees? 58.8% of the 135 that responded said yes, 33.6% said maybe, and only 7.6% outright said no. So that's a good response there. Even if you have a primary care physician, would you use the Wellness Center for tests, COVID, flu shots, immunizations, blood draws, knowing the copay? 64% basically said yes, 33% said maybe, and only 3.7% said no. On the final question that's relevant to this, would you use the on-site prescription drug dispensary, which I know Shin did not talk about, but it's being implemented there where they can go there and get their mostly generic drugs. There's going to be a primary list of what we utilize because they can see that through Anthem, and those would be the ones that are available to them. 84% of the people that responded said yes, and only 16% said no. So I think there's a good opportunity here for us from our employees, at least from the response that we got, that there would be, to the point of the usage would be there. So I do think it would be a good investment if we went forward with this, but again, it's a lot of money, and so I just wanted to bring that to the board and have a discussion about it before we move forward.
Can I ask a question?
Open for questions, yes.
I'm sorry, and you may have said this, but I just want to clarify. How is it, so it's zero cost to like a teacher if they wanted to go to the clinic?
Correct.
Yes.
Because the district is paying with the fee here,
Correct.
this $20,500 monthly, but then the cost savings will be on the back end because the insurance premiums are going to go down?
Correct, because we wouldn't have, that teacher that goes there wouldn't have a claim, right? We wouldn't file a claim into the insurance, it would be here. So a claim costs more
Right.
than it would cost for the service to be, the same service being provided would be at a higher rate. And so because we're self-funded, we would be paying at that higher rate. And so what happens is by them going here, the service is being provided at a lower rate, and therefore we're paying less out. And they're also paying zero because there's the high deductible health plan, right? There's a deductible there that they have to pay too. So that's savings to them, it's savings to us.
And they'll hit their deductible a lot, later. They may not even hit their deductible then.
Right, so they don't have to use their deductible. They're literally paying
If they
nothing.
don't,
Right.
right, exactly. There is no, it's also savings.
Anita has a question.
How would this work right now? We are working with the town, correct? On medical?
So the town is actually considering this as well. I don't know if they're going forward with it. They're actually considering becoming part of this, the health clinic as well. So, but that's a separate, there's an entire separate financial side for them on that side. This is just as purely ours, and then they would have.
Right, I understand that.
Okay.
But from what I thought in the past was that we worked with the town for both sides to get a lower cost for insurance.
Correct, and we would still, it's still through Brown and Brown for our insurance. And the town is also considering this from that perspective. But this would be an investment on our side. If they choose not to go forward, we could still go forward independently. And so our claims would be, we're still working together at Brown and Brown, and they're the ones that actually proposed this. However, what would happen is we can go forward and the town doesn't have to go forward, or they can go forward and we don't have to go forward. It's independent, but it's working with Brown and Brown. It's separate from the insurance, but it's kind of linked to it in a sense. We're still working with the town, but they can do it independently and we can do it independently. My understanding is Ed Swinkowski said that he's thinking about moving forward with it, so.
I'm presenting to him next week, too.
There you go. So,
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
So Howard, if the town decides not to move forward, it doesn't affect us?
It does
If
not
we
affect your
decide-
decision. We could still move forward independently of the town.
Okay, even long term, it doesn't affect our numbers?
Our
doesn't affect our numbers,
premiums will be lower based on,
Okay, but it's not a negative impact?
if we choose not to go forward.
No, if we choose to go, the town doesn't choose to go. Long term, it
Has no
doesn't
impact
affect
on
us.
us. The town not moving forward will not, ours claims and our premiums will be independent of what the town. They're part of the ACEs group, but no different than ACEs. It's based on their claims. So when when monthly claims come in and they're reported, the town has their own, and their premiums are calculated on their claims. We have our own, and our premiums are calculated on our claims, and that'll stay that way. So our claims theoretically should go down, and we should pay lower premiums if we end up.
Okay, so the idea of this concept is the fact that employees will go there, or most employees, based on your survey, will take advantage of it. And we pay a set fee, and at the end of the day, the claim that we have for those specific services that are offered in the health center will be cheaper, just because it's a contracted service. That's located at ACES, is that correct?
It's located, it's actually moving from Camden to North Haven.
Okay.
Moving to the new site is actually in North Haven.
Okay,
And so what happens is, because it's cheaper to have the person go there for the service, than it would be if they went to their primary care physician or to a local walk-in or to the hospital, right? So, well, if they're going to the hospital, they probably go to the hospital because that's an ER type of thing. But the point being is that if they go to a primary care physician, it's going to cost more, just because those services cost more than it would be if they went to this clinic.
okay. And your survey numbers that you got, that gives you a good indication that overall, the teachers and staff are receptive.
When
Most of them.
when I showed the survey numbers to Brown and Brown and to Everside, they
Yeah.
both said they were 35% of the survey return is what I'm going to get back.
Okay, because you're looking at a situation where you set up something like this and nobody wants to go.
That's the worst case scenario, right?
Yeah.
That's what we're talking about. So.
Okay, thanks.
I have a question on your survey numbers. So you had 35% of the staff responded.
Of the 388.
Okay, so 35% responded, and then half of that, a little more than half responded yes, correct?
Correct.
So we're looking at like 15 to 20% are for sure on board, right? Am I getting that right? Okay. I was just curious as to whether or not they had also seen a presentation prior to the survey, or will...
They have not.
So would it be possible for them to see a presentation and then resurvey?
To see if we can get a better...
I mean, for $250,000 annually, correct? So I'm thinking that it might make sense for staff to have access to a presentation, even one pre-recorded with the narrative, right? And then survey them again and get a little more concrete numbers.
I'll work with Everside and Brown to see what we can
I don't know if everybody else thinks that's a good idea.
I think that's a good idea.
So they have an idea of sort of what they're saying yes or no to. Yeah, would you, after you see all of this, would this be something that you would utilize with this zero cost, right?
Right. I have another question, though. I'm sorry. Can I ask another question? So for the chronic condition management, like if we have someone with a chronic condition, does this clinic replace their primary care or their endocrinologist or?
No, it doesn't have to in any way replace it. Sometimes, and over time, the membership themselves will start gravitating towards that provider more and more for the care, especially knowing they're not paying, because a lot of times those endocrinologists or somebody is very expensive in the marketplace, and they can, one of the greatest advantages for the members too is that they can come in and they can get their labs at no cost as well, and they can pick up whatever generic medication if it's on site immediately. So there's the physical return on investment to them of, you know, I didn't pay, and then there's the time aspects as well. And both, you know, can be attributed to why there's such an increase in utilization. When I saw your location too, that at 60 North United Drive, North Haven, that it's moving to over here, and I took the tour, I was like, it's very close. And I know that they're looking at the expansion. I think that there would be some hope that if you all decided to do something, you know, even just saying, yes, our membership wants to do something this year, then that kind of gives the green light or go ahead to some of the construction build out that they're trying to do over at that center, and make it, you know, a little bit more confident that there's going to be more groups and more people using it. I know that in the survey data, I mean, seeing it is believing it too. Meeting a provider, you know, doing an open house. When we come in, one of the big things that we do, and Adam has to lead the charge on this, is engagement, because we're on the hook for those things. Very often, and I think I mentioned to you, Howard, too, is if a group tells us, like, that's our main concern, is that people aren't going to use it, then you always have the right to tell us too that we want you to put some kind of guarantee in our contracts that say that I want, you know, what we would call performance guarantee, and that's a very reasonable thing for you to do, saying that I don't want to lose, you know, a lot of money over the fact that we didn't do enough marketing, we didn't do enough outreach, we didn't, you know, walk the floors, whatever it takes to get your people in. And all those things are things that we could do for you. I know that a lot of times though, members, they got to get in there. They got to see the shiny new doors open, and they got to see the equipment's there, and know the protection is there too between us and you all as school board, you know, folks, that they can't, nobody's going to see your medical records. Like, that could be an issue too. All these things are things that are on our shoulders that we have to perform for you and for your teams, and you should hold us accountable for it. And we don't have any concerns with that. That would be a typical ask that we would do for you in a contract like this, and maybe give some more confidence to it.
I was more just saying, like, for specialists, like the communication, the patient-centered care, if someone had a specialist, like there would be that communication, the sharing.
Absolutely.
Okay, that's really what I was just saying. Like, if they have a specialist that's outside of this, because with your chronic,
well, and
with the conditions here, right, usually someone's going to have a specialist that they're also working with. So, you know, you mentioned tech, so the electronic medical records.
And I will add too, to that point, we will still work with any specialists that they currently have. We want to make sure that the patient themselves is comfortable, right? That's key number one, because nobody's going to really tell you have any issues if you're not comfortable with that provider.
Right.
So we want that relationship to stay there. If they happen to say, hey, this provider is more comfortable with that person, then great, you know, you can assign them your PCP, right? But the specialist will still remain there, and our provider will work hand in hand with that specialist. We can actually order their labs that they request at no charge. They just bring in that lab request, but we also can communicate via our electronic platform with a specialist.
Okay, that was my other question. Was your electronic medical records?
Visits as well too, so there's a lot of intercommunication within that platform. Okay. But yeah, we'll absolutely keep that relationship there.
Can I ask a couple questions? Because I have a few. Okay. So the 1% year-over-year renewals, is that a trend or a guarantee?
That is the book of business average, yes, and it is trend. The Milliman slide you might find really interesting too on our validated metrics of how we've performed over time, and we have a whole thing on that if someone wanted to dig into, like, how is this performing. But yes, but there are certain things that we could, in the form of, like you said, a guarantee that we could place in there, and some fees at risk that might build up some confidence as to what metrics we'll be able to hit.
The volatility of health insurance is what makes me personally deeply uncomfortable, and we've seen like 6.5% renewals is, I think, optimistic. From our perspective, we've seen like 8, 13%.
I bet.
It's been all over the board. So 1.1% is very appealing from a renewal perspective. I just want to make sure that we're not being overly optimistic. I'd rather just kind of understand what that's really going to look like. And then my next question is about accessibility. So I realize that we're having a new site built here in North Haven, or like it's moving to North Haven. Are there other sites that are close, within a close radius? Or if there's, let's say somebody's on vacation in Florida and they want to go get a flu test, is there a site, are there sites in other places, or would they have to go to their home base?
Yeah, we have some shared use sites across the country in various states. They're not all over the country, they're in certain states, but the virtual primary care that you guys would have access to is always available, even if that member were traveling, that they can contact back to the center or through the app to make an appointment. And as long as it's in a type of appointment that could be changed to virtual, like if it doesn't need a strep test or something like that, then they always have that ability to do it. If they needed a lab, we're also leveraging our labs, our preferred lab vendors, in order to be able to send them like to a LabCorp Quest or something down in Florida. So I think we're accomplishing that in a different variety of means, but there's some physical, I think we got about 80 physical centers that are shared around the country that, meaning any member could walk into, it just would happen to be if they're in that town. And then more often the virtual line and using the local labs is the method that's used often.
Sure.
Yeah.
And then, so the $450,000 in savings realized year one that we have projected here on the numbers, does that assume, like what level of participation does that assume? Because if we're thinking that we may conservatively have 20% participation, how much does that affect the total net savings in year one?
Well, I'd love to point this out. I mean, the survey, there's a number of reasons people don't answer surveys. So the fact that you got over a third of the population that was available to answer the survey,
statistically
answer it.
Yeah,
that was a pretty significant method. But the fact that they say yes or maybe, we usually categorize both categories into a probable. I mean, even saying maybe is not saying no. So once they get in there. So I wouldn't necessarily say that we think that there's only going to be 20% utilization. Every book of business average that we've ever had shows that we get at least 60% of the employees to try the center at least one time in the first year. At least 60% trying it one time. After that, on the normal and higher ratios, that can be 75%. And it doesn't even take into account all the spouses and all the children that have the access available to them. Normally, those folks will also use it more than one time in a year, and we can attribute some contribution metrics to those too. And so that's what happens here is when we show, like, you know, okay, we're going to affect certain percentages on that slide 18. This is coming from what our historical averages have always produced. And it shows down at the bottom like 50% of spouses, 25% of children. This is that people are going to use it one time, like in a normal, you know, book of business that we've always historically had. And somebody like a Linda King or other schools that we have across the country could tell you what was their results, how did it work, and I know they'd love to share that kind of information with you.
Well, with an NPS of 91, that does check out. But I was going to ask also, is that NPS of 91, is that indicative of the Net Promoter Score for the entire organization, or is that...
That one is specific to that particular client and their provider there, but our whole nationwide Net Promoter Score is 86, I believe, which is still phenomenal in the industry. If you know much about, you know, the Net Promoter Scores. And the other one is the marketplace one. I think I took the slide out because it's so embarrassing, but a marketplace provider that you go to on a primary care basis, they're like in the low 10, 20% net promoter score, because people aren't getting the experiences that they would really expect or desire. And so it's a really dramatic difference.
So just one more general question, and that just is, at 1.1% average renewals, at, 450,000 a year in savings, right?
Yeah.
Like, how do you achieve that and still maintain a good quality of care and like good outcomes? With such a positive net promoter score, it seems intuitive that there's good quality care, but I'm having trouble squaring that circle.
Just how is the cost savings there? I think one of the greatest things, and Adam, you might be able to talk about this too, is based on my first slide about prevention, chronic condition management, and capturing those high-risk claimants sooner. So one thing I'd love to point out too is when you said that, and this is putting my old consultant, broker, insurance hat on for my old days, but with a self-funded plan, you're going to have shock claims, and you probably have a certain ratio, 75K or 150K or something, that all those that are above that, we might not be able to affect because they're very, chronic in their condition, or it's cancerous, it's this, it's that. But what we're doing when we spend that much time and we provide a holistic visit is we are getting to more of those chronics, and we're identifying them sooner, and then we're avoiding the high claimants later. So one of the metrics that I think most of the groups are really attracted to is when they see what their data looks like the first year without using a health center, and how many people might not have gotten mammograms, colonoscopy, foot exams, or eye exams if they're diabetics, all these things. And then what it looks like after 2 years with the center. And you see a huge change. I mean, we're talking like 80% compliance after year 2, and you might be starting with like a 40% compliance in advance of having a health center. Every time we do that, it's hard to quantify, but we're avoiding high cost chronic patient expenses later. And also, every claim that we get moved into the center, labs are expensive. I mean, over $100, where ours are about $8. Meds are expensive. Our meds are coming in about 50% lower than what the dispensing is going on in the retail settings. Every one of those chips away at dollars that hit your health plan and your claims, and that's what helps net our ROI.
I will add to the technology question you had. For my example, I was out of state and had a sports injury. I was able to do a virtual appointment, get a diagnosis and a prescription called in the same day. So that is available as well too. And then the net promoter score, I will say, the current provider we have is a 100, based on the surveys that we've been doing. So, and she's been here about 10, 11 months now. So, and we will get more efficiency we're more efficient as time goes on. So as the provider learns more about the patient base, really gets started getting into history, patient history, family history, it becomes a family at that point. And when that patient walks in, you're able to be more efficient with it, right? You could just start cutting things out, but you're still getting quality care. We won't sacrifice quality care, but it's just more efficient. And that's how you'll keep that ROI coming.
Can I ask 2 quick questions? In terms of staffing, what does it look like? Is it PAs, MDs?
Oh, sure.
And the second quick question is, in terms of the contract, is it year to year, or is it pretty much like a multi-year contract?
Yes.
So if we don't meet the numbers, we know that we have the option to pull back.
Yes, sure. Most of the time it is a few-year contract. Part of that is that ACES is also taking a little bit of risk here. They're building out extra space, accommodating North Haven Board of Education, hopefully even the town, North Haven. And so they've got a lot of overhead to carry on that front, and staffing. So it usually is a few-year type contract. It's not massively long. It's not like a 10-year contract or something of that nature, but a 3-year contract is typical in this industry. That's another reason why we make accountability so important, and we make sure that we're hitting benchmarks and metrics and performance guarantees that you can, slap our hand too and be like, no, you're changing things. You're changing the provider schedule. You're taking different tactics with marketing. And at the end of the day, if you need to pay us some money back off access fees, which no company ever wants to do that, it really puts our feet to the fire to make sure we perform. You asked about the type of providers,
Yeah,
too.
is it MDs or PAs?
Yeah,
or?
normally it is, and in this particular example, it's nurse practitioners and PAs, what they would call a mid-level type provider, but they always have a supervising MD. And that access is, two-way communications. They consult them regularly. They're reviewing their charts regularly. So that is the type of model that has been, well received even. I mean, the fact that this individual's got 100% NPS score tells me that that they're doing the right things. They really do enjoy having that collaboration with their MD and with having the tools and technology that they get to grow in this practice of medicine over time.
Thank you.
Sure.
So I think a lot of this depends on participation, so maybe the next step is to do what Jen suggested and really educate our teachers on what the program is about, because maybe without that knowledge, these numbers are a lot lower than they would be if they were educated on all of it.
You can get more to answer the survey.
Yeah. And then we
Sounds
could
good.
probably come together and talk about it a little more.
ACES did something too in the early stages that, Howard, I'm not sure if you have it, but there was a voiceover presentation that was given out to everybody on their staffing, their team, and it really helped educate to what all the capabilities are. So love to do something like that for you as well.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Okay, next on the agenda, we have the consent agenda from October 14th, 2021 Board of Education regular meeting minutes. Can I have a motion to approve the consent agenda, please?
So moved.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion passes. Next, we have our Board of Education student representative reports. Zina Mohammed, our senior, would you like to go first?
Sure.
Great, thank you.
So seniors are continuing to plan for their lives after high school, and college reps are still visiting our school. Today, seniors that are committing to college athletics had their signing. The senior girls Nike Bowl game is planned to take place on November 22nd in Amity at 6 p.m. And the marking period for quarter one just ended, so teachers are getting in their last grades, and grades should be finalized within a week.
Great, thank you. And Alex Ranciato?
So specific to the junior class, Class Royale tournament will be hosted in the auditorium after school on the 18th. It will cost $5 per person to enter, meaning it won't cost anything for the class in 2023 to host. The winner will receive a gift card with an amount that is to be determined. For those of you not familiar with the game, it's like a real-time strategy game. So it's free to play and everyone can participate. And then more so for the whole school, homecoming for the entire high school is scheduled for the 19th, as ticket sales have already begun. The food drive for North Haven Food Pantry has also started. Posters are placed around the school and a box has been placed in the main lobby where donations can be kept. And the final day of parent-teacher conferences was Monday, marking a successful conference period.
Great, thank you. Anybody, any questions? All right, thank you very much. So next on the agenda is the report of the Board of Ed Chair or Designee. So since Anita's not here, well, you are here. Do you have anything you want to say, Anita? You're good?
Really can't help, yeah.
Okay. Okay. So we'll move on to the reports of the standing committees. ACES?
ACES meeting is November 18th. It was delayed a week because of no school tomorrow.
Okay, thank you. Curriculum and instruction?
I'll just do a quick update. The group met on November 4th and we discussed a seal of biliteracy proposal, which I'll talk about later in my report, as well as plans for bringing Chinese classes to the middle school starting in 7th grade for next year. I shared during our meeting with the group that a credit is awarded to students at the high school who take a skills class. This is something that has been in place for many years. We just made it really official during that meeting. We discussed a textbook for grade 11 English. Mrs. Bass, our 612 language arts coordinator, will come back in the next couple of months to highlight how it fits in with some revisions we're doing to the grade 11 curriculum, and then make a decision on that textbook. We also discussed a few clubs. One that was brought to the group was a Deca Club, and we collectively talked about it being a business club for this year because Deca is a national organization, so the students who proposed it, we wouldn't be able to just get that up and running within a few weeks. It's a kind of like a National Honor Society. You have to follow through a path that's outside of the school district. So those students that proposed it will work with Mr. Bevins, who is one of our business teachers who agreed to be the facilitator, and Mrs. Ardito, our career and tech education coordinator. The group also approved a student club called Mental Health Matters, a debate club, and a chess club. And lastly, there were some proposals for ski clubs. Again, I don't know if you remember, we had that a couple of years previously. We weren't able to bring those forward to C&I because there are not adults that in the school, staff members who are willing to go on the field trips. So we can't have the clubs off-site without school personnel on them. So the students were going to go back and see if we had any staff members that wanted to facilitate that club. Yes, Eleni?
Is the debate club and the chess club only for the high school, or is it going to be available for the middle school too?
They're student driven and chosen, and they're at the high school. We didn't have any from the middle school. But if a middle school student wanted to propose one, they bring it through the middle school administration, and then it comes to CNI.
As far as people running the clubs, do we put that out to all schools, staff, or just high school?
Middle school sometimes proposes clubs too. There are more that come from the high school, honestly, because a lot of students are the ones that initiate those clubs. They go and they find a staff advisor, an adult on the faculty. It then goes to the administration, and then it comes through to CNI.
So I'm thinking like specifically with the ski club, do we put that out to all of North Haven staff or just high school staff? I'm thinking there might be somebody at an elementary school that would be willing to do it.
So that one actually went, they had a group at the middle school and the high school, and they did have two staff members who were willing to be advisors, but they were not willing to go on the trips.
Gotcha.
So that was the difficulty there. Howard had actually helped me earlier in the fall in speaking with our insurance company, because there's some liability with the ski club, if you remember from the previous time that we had raised it. So we kind of had that piece worked out, but then we didn't have the adults to be able to accompany them.
Okay.
And that's it for CNI.
Thank you. North Haven Education Foundation?
I can speak on that.
Okay.
So the North Haven Education Foundation met this morning. They will be holding a trivia night on April 28th. The venue has yet to be determined. And just earlier today, a letter from the foundation along with their grant application was sent out to the district. They're hoping this will generate some additional interest and encourage our staff to submit the grant applications.
Great. Policy Committee. There are a couple of potential approval. We have the potential for the approval of the following policies. I believe there are 4 of them. So the first one is the Safe School Climate Plan. We've all had our second reads on this, so can I have a motion to approve the Safe School Climate Plan policy?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Any discussion? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion approved. The second policy is the non-discrimination policy for students and personnel. May I have a motion to approve the non-discrimination policy for both students and personnel?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, this is easy. The third one, Title IX of the Education Amendments of 1972, Prohibition of Sex Discrimination and Sexual Harassment. May I have a motion to approve the Title IX of the Education Amendments of 1972, Prohibition and Sex Discrimination and Sexual Harassment Policy?
So moved.
Second?
So moved. Second.
Discussion? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, that motion passes. And the last one, Parent-Teacher Communication Policy. May I have a motion to approve the Parent-Teacher Communication Policy?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, so that motion passes as well. Thank you, everybody. Moving on to PTA Council. We didn't meet since the last meeting, right? Okay. And then the last one is the Mascot Committee, which I could speak to, and Amanda, please jump in. But we are midweek of our submissions week. So we've already gotten, I want to say, over 65 online submissions.
70.
Oh, 70, okay. You checked more recently. So we have 70 online submissions. I know students have been submitting online, and there are paper ballot boxes at the town hall, at the senior center, and at the library on the second floor. So this week will be all the submissions. The committee is gathering next week to cull everything, make sure everything goes through the guidelines, and then we will be putting forth the finalists, if we want to call it finalists. And then students will be voting in school online, and we will put it out to also paper ballots at the same 3 locations, as well as online. But if you are a North Haven resident, you'll be asked to submit some form to show that you are a North Haven resident in order for your vote to count. So that's coming in, I believe, the week of December 7th. I don't have it in front of me, but I think that's when it is, right?
The first full week of December, I think.
Yep.
Let me check on that for you.
And then we'll be having a
December
special,
6th.
we're having a special meeting on
The 13th.
the 13th, right? Special Board of Education meeting specifically for the mascot on December 13th. Okay, staff communications, superintendent report.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. So tonight's presentation will focus on the Department of Health and the State Department of Education's new Screen and Stay initiative. So last week, Governor Lamont announced that this plan will allow, in certain lower risk situations, students and staff who are not fully vaccinated will be able to remain in school after being identified as a close contact with a COVID-19 case. So DPH made a point on the Tuesday call that I participate in to emphasize that this initiative is not intended to apply to all contacts in all situations. And they also wanted us to note that this did not change the traditional close contact definition that's been in place for the last 18 months or so. So this initiative will only apply in the following cases: when there is a contact during the school day, the contact and the positive case are indoors or on the bus and are properly masked. When folks or students and staff are outdoors, masked or unmasked, and when students are properly supervised, and the contact remains asymptomatic. So there are instances where this doesn't apply, and that's for interscholastic athletics and other events, social interactions such as like parties and sleepovers outside of school, and when 6 feet of space cannot be achieved and the contact and the case are not properly masked. In addition to household contact, so if your sibling or a parent is a positive case, the screen and stay would not apply, or the contact can't consistently wear a mask or perform the daily screening that's required. And this is only for K through 12, it does not apply to pre-K students. So in order to participate in this Screen and Stay initiative, unvaccinated close contacts must attest to that they've read and understand the 9-page document, the Screen and Stay requirements. They must monitor their symptoms for 14 days, and they must intend to remain home if they are symptomatic. So the next 2 slides are just copies of the electronic form that we will be sending to close contacts that they will have to attest to. And so overall, we think the Screen and Stay initiative is a good option. It is an option for the board and the district to participate in. We do not have to, so districts have that flexibility. And in talking with Jen K and talking with the administrators, we're very confident that we can put this in play in order to keep our students in school. So we just wanted to bring it out to the board for discussion today and see if you have any thoughts or suggestions or ideas around it.
Amanda?
So I think it's great, and it feels like a step closer to normalcy.
It certainly does.
So I'm certainly personally supportive of this. I think it makes a lot of sense. It does not apply to vaccinated students, right?
It does not.
Just unvaccinated. And
The vaccinated students can continue, and staff can continue to stay in school.
correct. Yep. And as vaccines are now available for the 5 to 11 6-year-old age group. Have we heard of any other ways in which the state Department of Education or DPH have thought about potentially inching back to normal further?
Well, they are, I believe, November 22nd, we as a town are participating in a vaccination clinic that will be held after school at 2:30 to 8 o'clock. The message will go out very soon about that. We just, QVHD and Griffin Health working with the town to provide that. So that's another way that we'll be able to move closer.
I think that's great. I'm asking more specifically about, like, have you heard anything about the state, like, setting standards and saying, like, so if we hit, like, 70% vaccinated and under 2% positivity, I'm making this up. This is like
There's been no talk of that.
The state still has the mandate of the mask requiring until what?
At this point, it's February 15th.
February 15th is the state mandate. Eleni, did you have something?
Yeah, so this really means that if there's a positive student in a class, right? So vaccinated or unvaccinated, I mean, they don't need to quarantine unless they're symptomatic, right?
For the most part, yes.
Right, so it doesn't, because even if you're vaccinated and you show symptoms, you still can't go to school, so.
Correct. Right,
So
but
it's
there's
kind
those
of-
little caveats in there to make sure that people are masked and whatnot, and if they're outside of recess, they have to be supervised.
Right,
So
fine,
those
but I
type
mean,
of
it's
things.
across the board. I don't think we need to decipher who's vaccinated, who's not, right?
Fair.
But I think
that's all.
this is to address kids that have to quarantine or in the past have been asked to quarantine for extended amount of time.
Right.
And now they have the
option to
ability
stay.
It should limit that.
to show that they're not symptomatic,
Right.
so they can still come to school. So
And
they don't
families
have
can
to miss all
choose,
that time.
even if the district adopts this, families can choose to put their students into quarantine if they choose to do that. And us, we as a district will continue to provide remote instruction if they make that choice.
Right, fine. I just wanted to, like, if you're symptomatic,
But you summarized it perfectly,
you have
that's
to
it.
quarantine.
There's
If you're
just a
not
bunch of-
symptomatic, you don't, right?
So do we have to vote on that or no?
We do not, it's not as listed as an item on the agenda because the agenda was kind of posted after, before this really was released. So, if you like, the board would like to vote on it, you just have to add a motion.
So we're, I don't know, what do we?
We'd have to add it to the
You want to
agenda.
add it to the agenda and then make a motion to do it? Okay, so I have to make a motion to add it to the agenda?
Correct.
So I'd like to make a motion to add to the agenda the approval of the
Screen and Stay Initiative.
Green and Stay Initiative.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, discussion? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay. So now that it's added to the agenda, we're going to vote. So I'd like to make a motion to approve the Screen and Stay Initiative for North Haven Public Schools. All in favor, second?
So I'll second that.
Discussion? No? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion passed.
Thank you.
Yeah.
See Joyce writing feverishly over there.
We're good? Okay. Okay, Melinda?
Okay.
Oh, Patrick, was that it? I'm sorry.
That was
Is all
it.
you had? Okay.
Yes.
On November 2nd, teachers had a professional development day. Emphasis was placed on planning and providing targeted instruction to meet the needs of all students. Our high school teachers continued their work around the district's vision of a graduate, and middle school teachers worked on tasks for their upcoming NEASC visit in December. Since this summer, we have been working with departments to embed the competencies and dispositions from our vision of graduate work. You can remember we did that before the pandemic. And so we've begun to create rubrics to capture these competencies and dispositions. So far, we have some draft rubrics for the high school and middle school, and we'll start working on K-5 rubrics because it's going to be a kindergarten through grade 12 progression. Next month, Dr. Dalley will join us and highlight some of the work that we've been doing at the high school level, so that will give you a little bit of an update. As I mentioned on my CNI update, and actually I may not have mentioned it because I was jumbling up my things. At CNI, we talked about that district coordinators and I have been working on finding more advanced level courses such as AP and the UConn early college experiences for our students at the high school level. We have a whole lot of different opportunities from dual courses that students can take at Gateway, the Connecticut universities, the University of Bridgeport, and Quinnipiac. Currently, we offer 16 APs across all different disciplines, 2 UConn ECE World Language courses, a Gateway partnership in 5 areas, and business credit courses at the University of Bridgeport and a video production at Quinnipiac. So we have been working to try to bring more in, including the UConn ECE. And we're trying to find different areas, like courses like Discrete Math, different world languages, and bringing the Chinese in will make it so that we can ultimately, excuse me, bring Chinese up through the levels once we've had a middle school experience that can bring it up. Our intention is to continue to grow these opportunities while continuing to have our AP courses, because we think it's important to have a balance of both of those. Our guidance department is a wonderful resource to help students as they're navigating courses and thinking about what to take. Beginning in the fall of 2022, I left a handout about the Seal of Biliteracy. And this is an opportunity that we're going to bring into the high school, and it's an award that can be in recognition for students who have attained proficiency in 2 or more levels of a foreign language. And this is quantified by students taking an assessment called the STAMP assessment, and they show proficiency in reading, writing, speaking, and listening. And students in our higher level world language classes are able to access this by sitting for this exam. But so are our EL students who have a language other than English, and then they demonstrate their proficiency in that language as well as English. So it's a really wonderful opportunity. And if students reach this proficiency, they have a special seal that comes from the state of Connecticut. And that seal goes on their diploma. They get a quarter graduation, and they can get up to 9 world language credits at many of the state universities. So it's a really wonderful accomplishment for them and a really nice opportunity. So I'm thankful for the World Language Department for kind of bringing that to the forefront this year.
It's very inexpensive.
It's very
Compared to,
inexpensive.
like, the AP test and things.
Yep.
And it's really reasonable.
And we have a nice plan. We're going to start it obviously next year, but giving kids, particularly in the first year, an opportunity, if they choose, it's you have to select if you want to do this. They would sit for it in the fall, and we may even be able to offer another opportunity in the spring for some students who it might be the right fit for, using some of our PD days. So it's a really great opportunity, and the World Language Department will be working with students in level 4 and 5 courses and our ECE World Language courses to advertise that to them.
Is it any language? You were saying if a student is already fluent in a language, they can test without being in a level 4 or 5?
Yes, so exactly. So if they're a native speaker of another language, they have to then show proficiency in English and the native language as well. And then if it's an English-speaking student who's, say, taking Italian 5 or Spanish 5, they can test for that too. But it could be any language, even a language that we haven't offered in school.
Okay.
It's really a neat opportunity. Kind of along the lines of that, the high school is continuing to develop its internship program. And through this program, students will have the opportunity to gain valuable career experiences through internships with community, businesses, and organizations, and earning a half a credit towards graduation. We'll talk more about this next month when Dr. Dalai is here, but this is part of what we talked about in our revision of the 2023 graduation requirements. So we have an internship committee that's been working to define and advance this program. And Dr. Dalai, Katie Russo, our Career and Tech Ed department coordinator, and our business teacher, and our school librarian, Anthony Giordano, have been working really tightly on this. And we're able to carve out a couple of teachers and Anthony to be able to oversee a pilot of this in the spring so that we can start to try it out and see how it works. We've been working with our legal counsel to make sure that our safety and liability pieces are in place because students will be out into the community, into different businesses. But this will allow them to have some real hands-on experiences, and it's very similar to what Jen K proposed, if you remember last spring, and we've started with the technology department internships. That one just happens to be in the building, and these will be outside. So more to follow on that, but it's really a wonderful opportunity for our students. And lastly, we're going to be offering an after-school program for a limited number of students in grades 1 through 5 who can benefit from some additional literacy skill reinforcement. And we're funding this through our ESSER grant monies. And it's going to be held on Mondays, Tuesdays, and Wednesdays from November 29th through December 13th in each of the 4 elementary schools, similar to how we did it in the spring. Parents, again, will have to provide transportation. But families of selected students will be notified about this opportunity next week during elementary conferences where teachers can speak with them about it. And our intent is to continue to offer different small pockets of programs after school using these ESSER funds, and those will range from elementary through high school, some enrichment, some more intervention. I've been working really closely with our 612 people to think about ways that we can get creative about offering things for our older students, because they don't necessarily want to be locked into a reading course or a math course a certain number of days, but they may want to access like a writing lab or something different than we have. So we're going to try to use the funds to meet as many students as we can across the district. And that's all I have.
Can I ask some, sorry, can I ask some questions? So when you talk about like enrichment stuff, are things like junior achievement programs and things of that nature something that would be able to come into the schools as an enrichment? Because they have a multitude of pretty cool stuff, grades 6 through 12.
Yep, we could look into that. That's, I'm not sure if we can use our ESSER monies for that, but sometimes junior achievement has its own funding sources.
Yeah, they have grant funding.
We can look into that. It's kind of self-funded,
Yeah.
so a little bit different, but we can investigate it, yes.
And then a couple parents had just chatted with me about some of the enrichment programs and after-school stuff. They brought up junior achievement, but also they were saying some districts offer things like Lego engineering and things of that nature. So pretty cool enrichment programs that aren't, that like anybody could really be in, like Lego engineering. I was like, Lego engineering, that just sounds like fun. And it's very STEM oriented. So I didn't know if like that would go along the lines of like a club where a student would in the middle school would have to say, I want to do a debate club, or if it's more of an enrichment through the district, junior achievement, Lego engineering, those sorts of things. So I guess I'm just confused on like which paths those kinds to take, club versus enrichment sort of thing.
So in terms of the enrichment and intervention pieces that we're paying through ESSER monies, I would say those need to be more based in literacy and math, and we can probably pull some science into that. I think that that would be a fair link there. I don't think we could use it for junior achievement. I think that that would be just a different route. Students can, like I said, generate a club and talk to somebody in the building to help them come up with some ideas. And the reason they need an adult facilitator is because there needs to be somebody there to kind of monitor that and check in on it. But we really can be quite creative with that. And at the elementaries, there are some different buildings offer different ones, particularly through their PTAs, and there are a lot of STEM opportunities. There's more hands-on science type things. So I think those are all really good suggestions.
And then I just wanted to plug early college experience classes. So the ECE courses and the dual enrollment courses at some of the other colleges. I know you guys are working on that, so thank you very much for those opportunities. The way I understand it is that the ECE credits also open the door to students who may not have otherwise thought they could take a college course, and then they take a college course at a high school level, and then it can transfer into any college. So a lot of them will take it and be like, wow, this is awesome, I can do this sort of thing.
And we're really trying to look at some of those as half-year options if we can find them. Like our discrete math is one that we're really interested in because it's a different set of math than our AP calculus.
Right.
So it will open the opportunity up for different students to be able to access some higher level courses and only have to put a half-year commitment into their schedule as well. So we're trying to look for some different pieces with our ECE. I have a contact there, and our different coordinators in different areas are working with her. You have to have some criteria on the school side. It's not as clean and easy as we might think because our teachers have to have certain degrees and masters in certain fields. So for instance, there's like philosophy or political science, which would really be probably of interest to a lot of our students. We have to match up our teachers and their credentials to the university and make that happen. So I think it will be something that we continue to grow over time, and working with all of the universities, Gateway, UB, Quinnipiac, I think it really does give kids a lot of nice opportunities, and I encourage students to really work with guidance because they can really help them understand all of the options that are available. That's all I have.
Anybody else have any questions? Okay, thanks, Melinda. Director of Student Services, Jen.
So the counseling department at the middle school has set up some speakers to come on November 22nd to talk to the 8th grade students from the inter-district magnet schools. So presenters are coming from Cooperative Arts and Humanities High School, Metropolitan Business School, Engineering and Science, New Haven Academy, and high school in the community. And then also I wanted to talk about preschool. So the preschool team have been in collaboration with consultants from Cooperative Educational Services since October, and we're really working on enhancing our curriculum for the students. We're looking at our classroom environment, and we're also looking at the report card that's given to parents that they are reviewed at conference time to really make it more family friendly, the language of really what are my child's strengths, what are some areas of concern, and really getting that homeschool component. That's all I have tonight.
Thank you. Director of Finance and Operations, Howard.
Budget continues to remain on track. However, there are some areas that we are watching closely. One of them being the utilities, electric, other purchase property services, which is our water bills, and the natural gas. Electric rates are rising at a 12% clip right now, which if that continues through the balance of the year, we will be over budget by about $24,000 on what we budgeted with contingency. However, natural gas and water, although rising, are not rising as much as we budgeted with contingency, so those will net the offset. But as we enter the cold season now, I don't know what the natural gas bill will do as it continues, if those rates, if it goes up at that point. So I'm just going to keep an eye on it, and I'll keep you updated on it. Just so right now, they net each other out, but I don't know that that's going to continue. Cleaning services, as you have seen in the report, they are currently at a deficit of $17,000, and that was due to a need for the high school. In the high school, in the cafeteria, they have the round tables that have 8 seats at them. We couldn't use those because of COVID. Safety distancing, that we had to stay apart, so we had to use individual seats with the tablet arms. And so in order to clean the cafeteria, every one of those individual seats had to be picked up, moved, cleaned, and then put back. It's much easier to flip up a table with 8 seats on it, just throw that out of the way, so it took extra time. So there was costs associated with that. However, now with the new guidance, we are moving back to the 8 seats, or those tables. So it's right now it's $17,000. I don't think it's going to be as that much because we had encumbered it for the full year there, but that's going to go down, so we're going to save some money there. But I just want to give you that update on that one. What else? Oh yeah, fuel for the buses. Last year when we were building the budget, fuel for the buses was ethanol, which is gasoline, was at $1.25 per gallon because we're on the state contract. Diesel was $1.40. I had put into the budget at $2.25. Assuming that prices were going to go up as the economy turned around. It did go up, but we're now paying $2.70 and $2.80 for each of those. So again, I'll keep an eye on that, but that just projects to be over budget by the end of the year. But again, that's buried in transportation, and I think there's a bit of a contingency in there that might help us offset that. Next is any questions regarding the transfers. that you have to approve. I did highlight the ones in yellow that are the ones you need to focus on. I tried to put a little more, you asked for more definition. I don't know if that's enough or it's not enough. Just let me know if you want more definition as to what the explanation is. So if you're good with that. Connecticut Team Lax. I have presented what we went to them with the 15%, which was 15% discount. Mr. Porto, the attorney for them, said that he didn't think that that was going to fly, basically, and said he would discuss it with Mr. Bailey and get back to us with most likely would be a counter offer. So as soon as I hear from them, I will update you on that as well. And this was for the multi-year proposal for the turf fields for the lacrosse. ESSER 3 grant, which we were waiting for, has been finally approved, and we replied, and we applied and drew down $635,000. Of that $635,000, $290 of it will go back to our capital project fund, which will pay back the funds that we utilized for the elementary school fire alarm upgrade, which now has allowed us to order the furniture for the redesign of this entire area. So that should be in sometime and installed in January, February, so look forward to that. We continue to have our meetings here, so you'll see an entire redesign. We are working with a vendor to get rid of the shelves. We're going to reutilize some of them over at Montouise, so they will be reutilized, and then others will be, if we need them at any other schools, they'll be utilized there too. That's it. Any other questions?
So I do have a question around just ESSER money overall. Is there a way, this is not a high priority at all because I realize you're busy, but is there a way we could get just a report that tells us like ESSER 1, ESSER 2, ESSER 3, the allocation of the money and what it's been spent and what it's been spent on?
Yes.
That'd be great. Thank you.
Okay, so may I have a motion to approve the monthly financial report, including all recommended transfers?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion passes. This brings us to public comments. So I'd like to announce, prior to making your comment, please state your name and your address. We also ask you to record this information on the notepad on the table after making your comment. I saw several people already wrote their names when you came in, so if you did already, great, thank you so much. If you haven't, please make sure that you do. Okay, anybody in public have anything to say for public comment?
Tracy Riley, 1037 Hartford Turnpike. I'm actually reading this on behalf of my neighbor and friend, Crystal Sessa, who's unable to be here because she has kids that she needs to take care of. She's a licensed clinical social worker and really wanted to bring up the issue of mental health that's surrounding our children. So let me bear with me here so I can read this. All right. It's a major systemic concern from the top to the bottom. For an example, a teenager goes to the doctor because a counselor at school is worried they're depressed and send them to the doctor. The doctor 99 out of 10 times, or I'm sorry, 99 out of 100 times will not give the child medication to treat depression because they are concerned about side effects and they do not have enough medical oversight to be comfortable with monitoring it. Then they give the patient a list of therapists within the community that they tell the patient to get connected to. And then the therapist will help the medication referrals. The patient goes home and calls 25 numbers. 15 are full, and the voicemail says, like mine does, I can't keep a wait list because ethically it feels horrible to promise at some point soon their child would have care. Since no one is progressing out, we are all staying at capacity. The other 10 numbers often won't return calls or emails, and maybe by a miracle, they get an appointment with one, which is great. Then the teenager goes to the therapist and discloses needing medication. The APRNs in our area are 6 to 8 weeks at minimum wait list, and most aren't even adding to the wait list because they are overwhelmed, or even better, the insurance companies aren't paying because the insurance companies do not have the workforce to keep up with the level of incoming claims. The therapist is forced to decide, do we continue with a person who truly needs a higher level of care or refer out? Let's say the teenager is self-harming, for example, cutting themselves. And the therapist is so worried she sends them to the ED because this will at least get the med started. The client now will likely be either turned away because they aren't actively planning to kill themselves or they aren't at high risk enough. But they are bad enough to be admitted. They get trapped in the ER sometimes a week with no treatment. Families of the clients are angry, and rightfully so, but nothing changes. Nurses are disgusted and doctors are afraid of being wrong when a mental health need is making them worry if they let them go, they could die. Then the person maybe gets to the floor where treatment starts. They get the therapy by telehealth, sometimes from their hospital room, and possibly some meds, only to send them back out to the therapist that was already overwhelmed by the needs in the first place. Mental health has been the #1 crisis, in my opinion, since this has happened. Yes, COVID is scary and none of us want to see our family members get it. Absolutely. However, the rising suicide rate, drug use, marital discord, domestic violence, social anxiety, and other anxieties to even use words or advocate for themselves, and a lot of general lack of people skills is pervasive and confounding the more as time goes by. I understand that safety in a medical way needs to be paramount, but I am encouraging people to think about mental health as a medical need and not to think it as a second than physical health. For this, I encourage the district to think in some creative way that includes more time with people that are exposed to each other in a way that we can get these kids outside with mass breaks that includes freedom, not just to stand in a circle. Is it possible that we can move some of our classrooms outside and do entire lessons with kids spread out in small groups where they can have space to be kids and to listen without a mask on? Is it possible that we could allow the teacher even to take her or his mask off and sit and read to the children from a further distance, maybe by sitting on the bleachers while a little kid sits below on the lower one? Can we allow kids to see ourselves push the boundary just a little bit so that maybe they will also have a little bit more faith in our safety techniques that we are saying that help them, like the vaccinations and hand sanitizer and making sure we're always washing our hands? Can we allow kids to see that they're not going to catch germs just from being in the same football field as other human beings all spread out? That's not how it actually spreads. Can we allow the kids to see that there are safe ways to be together? I can assure you what's going to continue to happen and continue to be a worse problem, and I can also assure you or not, therapists or not, or mental health treaters can help the kids that are falling apart. We don't even have the capacity to help their parents. We certainly don't have capacity to help them, and it's literally scary. Telling people to reach out and get support from a mental health provider without making sure that there actually is a mental health provider is cruel. And we know that no one has these bad intentions. At some point in time, though, we do have to look and think what we're doing that's making these problems worse, and how can we fix them? We are all fighting for the same exact reason. We want the best for our children, but if we keep fighting each other in a way that makes it you're right and I'm wrong, or I'm right and you're wrong, we're never going to get anywhere, and I think we owe it to our kids to model something better than that. Crystal Sessa, licensed clinical social worker. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Anna Buono, 20 Alexander. I happen to know Crystal as well. She's an amazing person, an amazing therapist, and I know how overwhelmed she is and how many children she is seeing right now, and she has no room for any more. So I just want to echo what she said. You know, I have contacted principals and the district about having more outdoor time for the kids because they have to wear these in front of their friends and they can't see their teachers' expressions and their friends' expressions. And I understand it's a state mandate and you're following that, I get it, but I feel like there has been no effort to try to increase the amount of time the kids got to be outdoors. I was just given excuses like, at the middle school, the tent that's outside, the band uses it. Well, can't we find some more money to get another tent for other kids to be outdoors? You know, my son and his team have to eat lunch in the auditorium all year long. I think that's completely wrong. I've said, you know, what if he has a cup of soup? I mean, he will never eat a cup of soup, but you know, you expect these kids just to eat on their laps all year long? yes, they're children and they adapt very easily and they have adapted, but it's not okay. And I don't know how we've made it okay for this long and how we're not trying and doing better for them. That's kind of to go off of what Crystal brought to the table here. I don't know who decided that having an officer here tonight was something that would make the parents feel better about being here and better about the board and the district. That doesn't make it any better, okay? I don't know why the officer is here, because things are happening in other districts where people are going a little crazy. I have seen nothing in these meetings that would call for an officer to be here. So it is very offensive that you think an officer needs to be here at these meetings. So what I really came up here for was to talk about something a little bit different than that. It's another thing that I have called the principal about and spoken to Patrick about, is the amount of time that our kids are still on the Chromebooks during school hours. Why are textbooks on Chromebooks? And thank you, we have a junior here that is nodding his head. Why are we still promoting virtual learning? We're done with that, okay? The kids are done with it. It's enough. Take the textbooks off of the Chromebooks. Give them a book. Give them something. Give them a book they can turn the page and take home with them. I mean, I don't understand why we have gone to just putting everything on these Chromebooks. What if Wi-Fi goes down? It's an absolute possibility. People say, no way, we'll never lose Wi-Fi, it's never gonna happen. Well, they're predicting a virtual pandemic now that is inevitable. That's what the World Economic Forum that predicted COVID, and it automatically, a year later, here it's COVID. World Economic Forum predicted that COVID was inevitable, and they're predicting a virtual pandemic, that everything's gonna be shut down. So let's get the kids off of the Chromebooks, because who knows, it may come true, and now the kids don't have any books. So that's my rant for the evening. I'm sorry, Crystal's message got me fired up and upset because I see how it is affecting the kids. I hear about it. I know that there is a lot of mental, trials for kids during this time, and I feel like there's nobody talking about it. No one's talking about it. We're talking about, being not quarantining anymore. Great. I don't know what this attestation form is. Do we have to sign that in order to participate?
You do have to attest to it to participate.
Okay, can parents receive a copy of what that is that we have to sign and what we're agreeing to when we sign that?
Mm-hmm. If your child is identified as a contact, that gets immediately sent.
Oh, so that is only signed if they're, okay, I wasn't sure if that was something that you had to sign to get into this or whatever. Okay, all right, that's my rant for the evening, but please consider taking our lessons off of the Chromebooks once and for all.
Thank you.
Hi, Marilyn Imparati, 112 Arrowdale. I just wanted to find out, is there any stats from the nurses at the schools with kids coming in with headaches, stomach aches, eye strain?
The nurses do keep a log, yes.
Was that?
The nurses do keep a log.
Okay, has that increased in the past year or so?
I don't know the answer to that.
Okay, I mean, that's good to find out, especially with the mental health and the Chromebooks. So, just a information.
Anyone else have any public comment?
I do. Carla Zapay, Beechwood Drive. You answered it, Patrick, actually already, but I wanted to know, you said on November 22nd, we're going to have a vaccine clinic, correct?
The town is holding one,
Where's
yes.
it going to be?
At the rec center.
At the rec center. Okay, so it won't be at a school?
No, ma'am.
Thank you.
Gina Grasso, Spring Road. Is that even on? I didn't write anything. I don't really have much else to say. I spoke in August. Growing up, my parents told me to always do the right thing. So I'm just asking you to do the right thing, which would be considering other options rather than being another spoke on a wheel for Lamont. Doing the right thing would be not reiterating everything that you hear, but maybe questioning what you're hearing and possibly coming up with better ideas. The town and parents here would love to help you out with that if you need help. But masks obviously have to go. Hopefully we're getting there with this whole stay thing, whatever it's called. Chromebooks have to go. We need to have actual books that kids can hold and flip through. It's important. That's it.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, seeing no more public comment, may I have a motion to adjourn the November 10th, 2021 regular meeting of the Board of Education?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Any discussion? All right. All in favor? All right. Thank you, everybody.
The preceding program is brought to you in part through a grant from the Town of North Haven. Watch town meetings or other videos on demand at nhtv.com.